Hey, folks. We're gonna have a conversation about magic paradigms. So stick with me here for a few minutes. So what we're looking at here is I recently published a book called Tap on Tap Burn Elemental Key. This is about the way of the four elements and using the elements as a power source for your key. The four elements is what we are calling a magic paradigm. We first introduced magic paradigms in Tap and Tap Burn 5-color mana spell point variant rules core mechanics, where we first began introducing the concept of color paradigms through the 5-color magic system introduced by Magic the Gathering, which became something we could officially publish on DMsGuild when Ravnica got released. I think that was in 2019. Excuse me, I had some Sprite. So, let's just do a quick dive here into conversation about what a magic paradigm is and what that means for the monk specifically, or for your campaigns, if you wish. So the original magic paradigm that is in Dungeons and Dragons is the 8 schools of magic that have been around since first edition, like divination, necromancy, transmutation, conjuration. These are the language of magic, whether you are using divine magic, arcane magic, or maybe you would consider druids and rangers to be using primal magic. Those are sources of magic, where you're getting your magic from. But it's all just the same magic. So the default system in Dungeons and Dragons is the 8 schools of magic, and has virtually no impact on your character whatsoever. When you maybe if you choose a tradition of magic as a wizard, then it has some subclass ramifications. But otherwise, it doesn't really matter. Your spell slots, or if you're using a spell point variant rule like from the DMG, or universal spell points that I've published here on the DMsGuild, it doesn't matter. The points are generic. The spell slots are generic. It doesn't matter how many spells you know from each school of magic, whether it's divine or wizardly or druidic. It's all the same pool, and the schools don't really matter. They're just kind of there for incidental flavor if you choose to use it in your campaign, and it otherwise doesn't really make a difference. So what we're doing here is we're changing the conversation about what a magic paradigm is. Since Wizards of the Coast controls both Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, we're seeing them taking efforts and integrating those two intellectual properties into each other. And so far, it's been primarily narrative driven. Basically taking the perspective of Dungeons and Dragons as it stands and looking at Magic the Gathering from a D&D lens. And what the Tap on Tap Burn series here on DMsGuild is, and I mean, you are welcome to look at the full preview. The entire book here is for you to look at, so you know what it is that you'd be getting into if you choose to. But if you just flip through these books, you're going to see that these supplements try to look at Dungeons and Dragons from Magic the Gathering's perspective. Magic the Gathering made famous the 5-color magic paradigm, where you're looking at, let's see, what are we looking at? Let me find a book. Here is this book here, the revised 5-color magic spell list. It's pay what you want. So I mean, you can look at the entire thing for free if you want. Here's the PDF that you can look at as a preview, or if you want to contribute and purchase it, great, thanks. But the point here is that the 5-color magic paradigm from Magic the Gathering has 5 colors, not 8 schools, 5 colors. So, and those colors have very specific meaning in the game. There's 5 colors: white, blue, black, red, and green. And here's roughly there's a lot of great YouTube channels and a ton of great essays online about the philosophies of color. What does it mean to be white? What does it mean to be red? What does it mean to be green? It's fantastic for building your characters. I recommend you look at Dice Try. He's got an amazing channel that talks about flavoring your character from a color mechanic perspective. But these books specifically are making the mechanics of D&D work inside of the color paradigm. So, like, for example, here's some aspects of magic that exist inside of Dungeons & Dragons that resonate with the colors from Magic the Gathering. And you can read them here, hopefully as easily as I can. Divinity, healing, light, protection, restraint. These are ideas, mechanical ideas that you see in Magic the Gathering white cards. Black in Magic the Gathering, you see a lot of control, entropy, fear, soul, darkness. These are things that exist inside the Dungeons & Dragons game worlds that would resonate with black magic cards in Magic the Gathering. Red, aggression, earth, emotion, energy, impulse. These are some of the aspects of Dungeons & Dragons mechanics that exist in the cards that you see from Magic the Gathering. Is that making sense? So let's take it a step deeper. There's a number of types of damage, elemental damage, or magic damage types in Dungeons & Dragons that don't 100% translate into Magic the Gathering. But if you flip through a number of cards that correspond with the colors of white, blue, black, red, and green, you're going to see common themes cropping up in those cards that are evident with the different types of damage that exist inside of Dungeons & Dragons. Acid, you're going to see a lot of acidic stuff in cards that are black and green. You're going to see a lot of cold in cards that are white, blue, green. You're going to see a lot of fire in only red. You're going to see radiant damage that's primarily only white. You're going to see necrotic effects that are primarily only black. It's interesting that fire, red, necrotic, black, radiant, white. But everything else pretty much has tastes to it. Poison being black and green. Green is interesting. It's acid, cold, poison, thunder. A lot of natural elements or creature type, like natural creatures, is what you see in green. Cold, force, psychic, radiant, very white wizard type damage effects or cold effects, like winter storms or like I'm blanking on maybe some white wizards because this is just an improv conversation, so forgive my clumsiness. But blue is very wizardly. Black is very wizardly. You see a lot of necrotic. Poison makes a lot of sense. Poisoning with like rogues are generally black and blue in Magic the Gathering. So like psychic damage as being coercion, or mind control with like restraint crops up here in white. So these different damage types resonate with these different colors. So if you take these damage types and you mix them with these different aspects of magic, you're going to come up with a spell list from the Player's Handbook and other sources that's going to basically pair the colors or devote each spell to their appropriate colors. Let's take a look at Color Spray. Is a blue spell. It has mental effects that cause influence on characters. That's a very blue sort of aesthetic in Magic the Gathering. Compelled Duel is forcing someone against their will by tripping their emotions to force them to perform an action. The coercion is very black. The manipulation is black, but just the elemental charge, the emotional charge that goes with it, that's very red. So that's a black-red spell. And you could always research these spells to be different colors. You could create a white version of Compelled Duel, which is a great cash sink and a really fun way to flavor your characters. But we're creating this language for what the native colors is for each of these spells. And if you're going to pick up the Core Mechanics book, if you purchase it, there's a zip file that you can download that's got an extensive spreadsheet with all 509 spells that are categorized like this, and then they break down each individual class, like all the wizard spells specifically through all the books. And it's updated every time a new book comes out. I just finished updating Strixhaven, which was easy because there's only 5 of them. But I do the job, and it gets done. So, because we want to continue to expand this language about magic paradigms. So, what the tap and tap burn elemental key does, it approaches Magic the Gathering, the color mechanics, and it specifically, because it's the 4 elements, it specifically focuses on fire, green, red, green, and blue. Red, green, and blue, the 3 primary colors that deal with elemental damage and elements inside of Magic the Gathering. Like white and black are more like society or personal self, divinity, and more carnal desire. So it's not so much nature as it is will and perspective, psyche, higher self, not animals. Animals don't operate on the same level or in the same way that sentient people do. So white and black is more like sentience, while green, blue, red, that has a much deeper elemental connection. So if we're looking at the monk, the way of the 4 elements, we're ironically using 3 colors from the 5-color magic system. But it goes deeper, because 5-color magic is just one type of magic paradigm. There's the 8 schools of magic, which is, if you're going to cast a transmutation spell, it's because it's changing you in some way or changing the target of the spell that makes it transmutation. Conjuration spells bring things into existence or bring things from elsewhere to be in a new location, like teleporting is conjuration. So the 8 schools, there's so many of them that they can be very siloed in what they actually represent. And the less aspects of magic, the different facets, the less facets of magic that you have, the broader application they have. So 5 colors does more per color than the 8 schools do. And so since this is an elemental monk, like if we do a book about the Mercy Monk and like Lawn Death Monk, that would be a monk that's focused on white and black mana as opposed to the elemental manas, because it's all about soul and consciousness. The astral self monk would be like white and blue, because that's dealing with soul and extraplanar realms of existence, which is a very blue sort of conversation to have in Magic the Gathering. But this book specifically is about the way of the 4 elements. So that's we started off with Magic the Gathering because we just have more content about the 5-color mana paradigm right now. But now this book is awesome because it's introducing a 3rd type of magic paradigm, which is the paradigm of 4 elements of air, earth, fire, and water. The cover here has 5 symbols on it because we're blending the 3 colors of magic, which fire and red use the same mana symbol. Water and blue use the same water symbol. And if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering, you know that those icons use fire and water as the representation for red and blue respectively. So this is kind of a pun. So thanks for taking that trip with me. But if we're looking at the 4 elemental paradigm, we're looking at air, earth, fire, and water, specifically those 4 elements. And let's go ahead and get into the book here. I mean, it's pretty obvious what aspects of magic each of the 4 elements represents. And interestingly, the monk has a very limited set of spells that it uses. It doesn't deal with things like clone or teleport or, Geas. Those spells reach far beyond what the elements are. So the spells that this monk subclass has is a limited set, and it's easy to encapsulate what each of the elements means. Air, it means air, if it's air related, or if you're somehow relating the discipline to an air effect, then it's going to be air magic. Or if it's water related, then it's obviously going to be water magic. So, and et cetera, et cetera. So like, like stone shape, that's a earth magic spell. Move earth magic spell. Fireball, fire magic. It's really straightforward. But the D&D, the damage types that are in D&D aren't water damage or air damage. They're thunder and lightning damage, cold damage. They don't track perfectly. But fortunately, we only have to look at 4 elements. In fact, it's really curious because the let's see if this populates. The way of the where is it? Let's scroll up here to Long Death can say 4 elements. So there's 17 disciplines that you can learn if you take the way of the 4 elements. And curiously, there's only 3 types of elemental damage that exist inside this array. And those elements are cold, fire, and thunder. We've expanded on it so that there's 4 elements. So let's have 4 types of damage, but you can see they don't all necessarily track to each other. Like if you're thinking like Avatar the Airbender, and you know Iroh, who's freaking awesome. He channels lightning, and he's a firebender. He's channeling lightning because he's pulling the fire from lightning. It's like an extreme form of it. Here we're representing lightning as either air or fire. We're representing cold as either air or water, because you can have freezing rain, you can have freezing winds, you can have a freezing ocean, but you can't have freezing fire. You can't have freezing lightning. You can't have freezing thunder. So there's some logic that goes into the types of damage. And you can see here on the other side that the damage types, they track the same as they do in the burp. Where was it? Oh, yeah, here. Sorry, I'm fumbling around. You can see that these damage types, they still track. So you're seeing cold. We left white out of the equation because white's not a very elemental color. But you can still see UG for cold. And we see cold damage is UG. So it's tracks. The system is built to drop into the 5-color magic paradigm. But at the same time, if you don't want to use 5-color magic, it now starts to introduce the language of the 4 elements of magic as a magic paradigm. So this book is a full preview. You can look through the entire book if you choose to purchase it or not. I'd love to support, but you know, the important thing here is that we're beginning a language about paradigms of magic, that we don't have to use the 8 schools of magic to play D&D. You can introduce new paradigms to express classes differently. If this book does well, then that's going to be an indication that there's a stronger hunger for elemental magic, that's a paradigm that people are interested in having. So we can then build out like the storm sorcerer. That could very well be an air and water sorcerer using air and water mana to cast your sorcery spells. A paladin of the sea from Wildmount could be a water devoted paladin that uses all these spells that are using water magic to cast its spells. And maybe its smite isn't radiant damage. Maybe instead a paladin of the sea is dealing cold damage. So there's ways you can play with it so that the flavor of your character is being reflected in the mechanics of the magic paradigm that you're using. And this is going to show up again and again throughout this book. And as I begin these quick explorations of different topics of conversation, we're going to see how these different paradigms actually play out inside this book and how that can apply to you. And when I get done with the full through walkthrough, I'll begin conversations about, like, for example, how can you play how would a monk that belongs to Prismari, what would their studies be like in Strixhaven? Or if you were to be a monk in the Quandrix school, what would your studies look like there instead? If you were in the Gruul clan of Ravnica and you are a monk. What is your devotion going to look like to red and green magic? So there's a lot of different ways we can play with this, and we're going to be able to have characters that have spells and mechanics that are completely reinforcing the aesthetics and narrative of your character in ways that the 8 schools of magic were never designed to do. So we're pushing what the 5e system can be and what you can do with it as far as character development and expressing your character's aesthetics in different ways than what the player's handbook would otherwise provide for you. So if this stuff is interesting to you, down in the description below, there's a link to all these books. They're all 100% free to look at. You should just thumb through them to see if you like them. If you like my art, buy them. It's the best way to tell me that I'm doing a good job. If not, you see my Twitter there. Follow me. Follow this channel. If these are ideas, like if you want to play in a Ravnica campaign with your DM, have them take a look at these books for free and say, hey, do you guys want to play with color magic for a while and see how this stuff plays out? Start a conversation with me. Hit me on Twitter. Drop comments in below. I would love to be a part of whatever ideas you have. As more and more magic channels start cropping up on YouTube and I find out about them, I can drop ideas about how you would have magic interact with stuff like classes and constructs. Is a great magic channel. Dice Try. I'm one of his Patreon supporters, so you should definitely check out Dice Try. He's amazing, and all his color mechanic, all his color narrative feeds in perfectly with the mechanics that are being introduced in these books. And we're just starting the conversation about elemental magic, and that is yet another magic paradigm that we can pursue. So thanks for letting me rant at you. You can see in the playlist that we're building out page by page the information inside this book, and I'm as I have time between art gigs and commission that I stream here online, you'll see me dropping in these new conversation points. So be welcome to stick around, check it out, and I'd love to hear from you. So that's all I got for now, and so I'm going to check out and look